The hospital room froze when she leaned forward, lips trembling. Machines hummed. People held their breath, and time itself seemed to pause. What she whispered next was so powerful, so unexpected, that everyone present felt their hearts shatter at once, and nothing would ever be the same again. The room was filled with quiet tension, the kind that pressed against the chest and made breathing feel heavy. Doctors stood still, nurses paused mid-step, and family members clutched one another as if afraid the world might slip away. On the bed lay Amara, fragile and pale, her strength fading faster than anyone wanted to admit. She had been fighting for weeks, silently enduring pain so others wouldn't worry. Her eyes, once full of warmth, now carried the weight of unspoken thoughts. Ethan stood closest to her, his fingers wrapped tightly around her hand. Regret burned in his chest. He had postponed visits, delayed conversations, convinced himself there would be more time. Now, time felt cruelly scarce. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to confess everything he had buried, but fear kept his words locked inside. Amara stirred, drawing everyone's attention. With visible effort, she raised her head slightly and gestured for Ethan to lean closer. The machines beeped louder, as if warning them that something irreversible was approaching. Her lips parted, breath shallow, eyes glistening with unshed tears. Everyone leaned in, unknowingly holding their breath. What she was about to say wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. And in that fragile moment, before a single word escaped her lips, the room felt suspended between what had been lost and what might still be redeemed. Ethan lowered himself beside her, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain others could hear it. He expected a goodbye, maybe a final request, something simple and heartbreaking. Instead, Amara's fingers tightened weakly around his, grounding him in the present. Her gaze never left his face. "You were never late," she whispered. The words hit him harder than any accusation ever could. Confusion washed over his grief. Tears welled in his eyes as memories flooded back. Missed dinners, unanswered calls, moments he thought he had failed her. He had carried that guilt like a quiet punishment, believing he had disappointed the woman who had given him unconditional love. Amara swallowed, gathering strength. "You came every time I needed you, even when you didn't know it." Ethan's breath hitched. He realized she had seen him more clearly than he had ever seen himself. Around them, the room remained silent, but the emotional shift was unmistakable. Her words weren't just meant for him. They rippled outward, touching everyone present. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that spoke of forgiveness without conditions. In that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Love wasn't measured by perfection, but by presence, intention, and heart. The regret he had nurtured for years began to loosen its grip. Her whisper hadn't just reached his ears. It had rewritten the story he had been telling himself. And time, once rushing forward mercilessly, seemed to slow, allowing that truth to finally settle. Amara's breathing grew uneven, yet her expression softened, as if a burden had been lifted. She glanced around the room, her eyes resting briefly on each familiar face. Her sister wiped silent tears. Her mother clasped her hands in prayer, and the nurses stood motionless, witnessing something far deeper than medicine could explain. "I kept a secret," Amara continued, her voice barely audible now. "Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to protect you." Ethan frowned, confusion and concern intertwining. "Protect me from what?" he asked softly. She closed her eyes for a moment, then reopened them, filled with a mix of sadness and peace. "From carrying my pain," she whispered. "I wanted you to live freely without guilt." The realization struck Ethan like a wave. She had endured silently, choosing love over comfort, sacrifice over complaint. Her strength humbled him. He thought about how often people hid their suffering, believing silence was kindness, never realizing how deeply it could wound those left behind. The room felt sacred now, as if everyone understood They were witnessing a rare act of emotional honesty. Amara's secret wasn't scandalous or shocking. It was devastating in its purity. She had chosen love in its most selfless form. As her strength waned, Ethan leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was losing her. Instead, he felt her teaching him one final, unforgettable lesson about compassion, sacrifice, and the quiet power of unconditional love. Tears flowed freely now, no longer restrained by pride or fear. Ethan felt something inside him break open, a place he had sealed off long ago. "I wish you had told me," he whispered, voice trembling. "I would have stayed. I would have carried it with you." Amara's lips curved into a gentle smile. "You did carry it," she said. "You just didn't know." Those words settled into the hearts of everyone present. How many times had they misunderstood love? How often had they mistaken silence for absence, or distance for indifference? Amara had shown them that love could exist quietly, powerfully, even invisibly. Her mother stepped closer, pressing a trembling hand to Amara's hair. "You were always too strong for your own good," she whispered through tears. Amara exhaled slowly, her energy fading. "Strength isn't pretending you're okay," she murmured. "It's loving even when it hurts." The machines beeped irregularly now, pulling the staff back into motion, but something had already changed. This wasn't just a moment of loss. It was a moment of truth. Each person in the room felt it, an unspoken promise forming in their hearts to love more openly, speak more honestly, and never assume there would always be more time. Amara's secret had not only stopped time, it had reshaped it. As the doctors gently intervened, Ethan refused to let go of her hand. He spoke quickly now, afraid time might surge forward again. "I hear you," he said through tears. "I see you, and I promise, I won't live quietly anymore." Amara's eyes fluttered, but she heard him. Her fingers pressed once more against his palm, a final, intentional squeeze. It wasn't goodbye. It was acknowledgement. The room felt heavy with emotion, yet strangely peaceful. Her secret had done what words often fail to do. It had healed wounds before they became regrets. Ethan understood that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about presence, forgiveness, and courage. As her breathing slowed, everyone remained still, honoring the moment. No one checked the time. No one spoke, because for those few precious seconds, time truly had stopped, held in place by a whisper that carried more love than an entire lifetime of noise. And though the world outside would continue moving, each person in that room would carry her truth forward, changed forever by a quiet voice that reminded them what it truly means to love. After that moment, the room felt altered, as if the air itself carried Amara's words. Ethan remained seated long after the doctors finished their checks, his hands still wrapped around hers. He replayed her whisper again and again, realizing how deeply he had misunderstood love. He had always believed showing up meant being physically present. Amara had shown him something far greater. Love could exist in intention, sacrifice, and quiet endurance. Outside the room, the hallway buzzed with distant movement, but inside, silence held meaning. Ethan noticed how everyone avoided eye contact, each lost in private reflection. Her sister stared at the floor, recalling arguments left unresolved. Her mother silently blamed herself for not seeing the pain hidden behind Amara's smiles. Ethan finally stood and walked to the window. The city moved on as if nothing had happened. Cars passed. People laughed. Life continued. And yet, inside him, something irreversible had shifted. He understood now how easily people assume there will always be another conversation, another apology, another chance. Returning to her bedside, he spoke softly, even though she no longer responded. "I won't waste time anymore," he promised. "I'll say the words people are afraid to hear." Whether she heard him or not didn't matter. The promise was real. Amara's secret wasn't fading with her strength. It was settling deep into every heart in that room, quietly demanding change. Later that night, the nurses dimmed the lights. Amara slept, her breath shallow but steady. Ethan sat alone now, exhaustion heavy on his body, but his mind restless. Regret crept in, not sharp and punishing, but soft and instructive. He realized regret didn't exist to destroy people. It existed to wake them up. He remembered moments he had dismissed as ordinary. Amara bringing him coffee without asking, checking in with simple messages, listening without interrupting. He had mistaken her quiet care for something that would always be there. Only now did he understand its value. Across the room, her sister whispered a prayer. If love could heal, she'd already be saved, she said quietly. Ethan looked back at Amara and replied, maybe love already did something else. He saw it clearly now. Even if Amara never spoke again, she had given them something permanent, a lesson that would outlive grief. The room wasn't filled with despair anymore. It held purpose. Ethan leaned closer and spoke again. Thank you for trusting me with your truth. His voice cracked. I wish I'd learned it sooner. Her face remained peaceful, as if she had finally released something she had been carrying for too long. And for the first time since the doctors delivered their grim prognosis, Ethan felt calm. Not because he wasn't afraid of losing her, but because he knew her love would never truly leave. Morning light slowly filled the room, painting everything in soft gold. Amara's condition hadn't changed, but the energy around her had. Visitors arrived quietly, friends, distant relatives, each sensing the gravity of the moment. Words were few. Tears came easily. Ethan noticed how differently people behaved now. Hugs lasted longer. Apologies came without being asked. Conversations felt honest, stripped of ego. Amara's secret had spread, not through gossip, but through emotion. Everyone felt it. One nurse whispered to another, "You can feel the love in here." And it was true. This room felt unlike any other in the hospital, not because of hope or miracles, but because of truth. Ethan sat beside Amara, holding her hand as if anchoring himself to the present. "You changed us," he whispered. "You made us braver." He realized something profound. People often wait for tragedy to give meaning to love. Amara had done the opposite. She had used love to give meaning to tragedy. Her breathing faltered briefly, sending a wave of fear through the room. Doctors moved in, focused and calm. Ethan stayed still, refusing to let panic replace presence. Whatever happened next, he would face it fully awake, because time might move forward again, but the lesson Amara whispered would remain frozen in their hearts forever. When the doctors stepped back, relief washed over everyone. Amara stabilized, fragile but holding on. Ethan exhaled deeply, unaware he had been holding his breath. He rested his forehead against her hand, grounding himself in gratitude rather than fear. He thought about how many people walk through life, carrying secrets disguised as strength. How many suffered silently, believing their pain was a burden. Amara had carried hers with grace, but at a cost no one should bear alone. "I won't let silence be love anymore," Ethan said quietly. Her sister nodded through tears. "Neither will I." In that moment, promises formed silently across the room. Promises to listen better, to speak sooner, to love louder. Ethan looked at Amara's face, memorizing every detail. "You trusted us with your truth," he said. "Now we'll live it." Though she didn't respond, her expression remained calm, almost content. It was as if she knew her work was done, not in fixing things, but in revealing them. The machines continued their steady rhythm, marking time again. But nothing felt rushed anymore, because now every second mattered. And that was her final gift, not stopping time forever, but teaching them how to truly live within it. As evening approached, the room settled into quiet reflection. No one spoke above a whisper. Ethan realized grief no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like a teacher. Pain, when paired with love, could transform people rather than break them. He squeezed Amara's hand gently. "Rest," he whispered. We'll carry this forward. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the window, slow and steady. It felt symbolic, cleansing, gentle, honest. Ethan watched it fall and thought about how love, like rain, often arrived quietly, unnoticed until it soaked everything. The doctor approached and spoke carefully. The next hours are important. Ethan nodded, understanding more than words could express. Whatever happened next, Amara's voice would not be lost. Her secret had already traveled beyond the room, beyond the hospital, into the way each of them would live from this moment on. He leaned close one last time that night. "You stopped time for us," he said. "Now we'll make it count." And as the lights dimmed once more, the room rested, not in fear, but in meaning, held together by love that had finally been spoken. The night stretched long, but no one complained. Time moved differently now, slower, heavier, more intentional. Ethan sat beside Amara, watching her chest rise and fall, each breath a fragile victory. He realized that fear had quietly loosened its grip. In its place was something steadier, acceptance, not of loss, but of truth. He thought about how often people confuse love with control, believing they must fix everything. Amara had shown him that love could also mean letting go, trusting others to carry what you no longer can. That realization humbled him. Her mother finally spoke, voice trembling. She always protected everyone else. Ethan nodded. Even now, the words hung in the air, heavy but honest. There was no anger left in the room, no bitterness. Only reflection, only gratitude. Ethan leaned closer, speaking softly. "You don't have to be strong anymore," he told Amara. "We see you now." For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine life after this room, not without her love, but guided by it. He understood now that people don't disappear when they leave. They transform into lessons, into choices, into courage. The machines hummed steadily. The world outside remained unaware of the quiet revolution taking place inside this room, a shift from fear to meaning, from silence to truth. Amara had changed them all, not by surviving, but by loving bravely until the very end. As dawn approached, Amara stirred faintly, as if responding to the familiar voices surrounding her. Ethan's heart skipped when her fingers moved again, barely noticeable but real. Everyone leaned in, hope cautiously returning. Her eyes fluttered open just for a moment. They were tired, but clear. She looked directly at Ethan. "I meant it," she whispered. Every word. Tears streamed down his face. "I know," he said, "and I'll live it." She smiled, small, peaceful, complete. That smile carried no fear, no regret, only release. The room exhaled together. This wasn't a miracle in the way people expected. It wasn't recovery or rescue. It was something quieter, deeper. A moment of understanding so complete it felt sacred. Her sister held Amar's other hand, whispering apologies for moments lost to pride. Her mother whispered gratitude for a daughter who taught them all how to love more honestly. Amara's eyes closed again, her strength fading, but her presence remained powerful. Ethan realized this was the truest form of second chances, not rewriting the past, but choosing differently going forward. In that fragile moment, love felt infinite, and time, though moving again, carried a gentleness it hadn't had before. The doctor entered quietly, confirming what everyone already felt. Amara was nearing the end of her strength. No alarms rang. No chaos followed. Just stillness, respect, and reverence. Ethan felt grief rise again, but it didn't drown him. It stood beside him, reminding him of what mattered. He held Amara's hand firmly, grounding himself in gratitude rather than despair. He spoke steadily now. "You don't have to protect us anymore," he said. "We're ready." Her breathing slowed. The room felt suspended, as if the universe itself was listening. Ethan reflected on how often people wait until the end to say the most important things. Amara hadn't waited. She had chosen honesty when it mattered most, and in doing so, she had given them freedom from guilt, from regret, from silence. The nurse wiped tears from her eyes discreetly. This wasn't just another patient. This was a reminder of why compassion mattered. Amara's face remained calm, untouched by fear. It was the face of someone who had finished their work. And as Ethan whispered his final thank you, he understood something profound. Love doesn't end when a heartbeat stops. It changes form. It becomes courage. It becomes truth. It becomes the reason we choose kindness tomorrow. The moment came quietly. No dramatic shift. No sudden sound. Just a gentle stillness. The machine slowed, then softened into silence. Time did not rush forward. It bowed. Ethan felt the weight of the moment press against his chest, but it didn't crush him. He closed his eyes, breathing through the pain, honoring the love that had shaped him. Around him, tears fell freely, not from shock, but from reverence. Amara's mother kissed her forehead. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. Her sister held Ethan's arm, steadying them both. No words were needed now. Ethan remained seated, holding Amara's hand even after warmth began to fade. Letting go felt impossible, not because of loss, but because of gratitude. He had been trusted with her truth, and that trust would guide him for the rest of his life. In that room, grief and love coexisted without conflict. Loss didn't erase meaning. It revealed it. Amara had not stopped time to avoid death. She had stopped it to teach them how to live. And as the world slowly resumed its pace outside the hospital walls, those inside knew they would never experience time the same way again. Hours later, the room stood empty. Sunlight touched the bed where Amara had rested, gentle and forgiving. Ethan returned one last time before leaving, standing quietly in the doorway. He didn't feel alone. He felt changed. Walking down the hospital corridor, he noticed people rushing, distracted, unaware of the fragile beauty of existence. And for the first time, he didn't judge them. He understood. Everyone learns when they're ready. Stepping outside, he breathed deeply. The world felt louder, brighter, more urgent. He knew now that love demanded action. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. He pulled out his phone and sent messages he had postponed. Apologies, gratitude, love. Amara's whisper echoed in his heart, not as sorrow, but as guidance. Time hadn't truly stopped that day. It had been reset. And from this moment on, Ethan vowed to live differently, to speak honestly, love openly, and never let silence steal what words could save. Because some secrets are meant to be whispered only once, and then lived forever. Days passed, but Amara's presence lingered everywhere, in conversations, in silence, in the choices people began to make. Ethan found himself moving through life more slowly, noticing things he once ignored. The warmth of sunlight, the weight of words left unsaid, the importance of listening without rushing to respond. At home, her absence felt loud at first. Every corner held a memory, but slowly, the pain softened into something gentler. Not forgetting, never that, but understanding. Ethan realized grief wasn't about holding on to sorrow. It was about honoring love. He opened a small notebook and began writing. Not about loss, but about lessons. About how Amara had loved without conditions. About how silence could be mistaken for strength. About how time was never promised. Friends noticed a change. He spoke more honestly. He apologized quickly. He showed up fully. Amara's whisper had become his compass. One evening, Ethan stood by the window watching the city lights flicker on. Life moved fast, just as it always had, but he no longer felt left behind. He felt aligned. Amara hadn't just changed one moment in time. She had reshaped the way he would live every moment after. And that, he realized, was her greatest gift. At ATA's small gathering weeks later, Ethan found himself sharing Amara's story. Not the sadness, but the truth. People listened closely, some with tears, others with quiet reflection. Her whisper had found new ears. A woman spoke softly afterward. "I haven't told my father how much he means to me." Ethan nodded. "Tell him." That was how it spread. not as grief, but as courage. Ethan realized something profound. Stories don't keep people alive, but they keep love moving. Amara's voice lived on through action, through honesty, through changed hearts. He visited the hospital one afternoon, delivering thank you notes to nurses who had been there that night. One of them hugged him tightly. "We don't always get reminders like this," she said. Ethan smiled. She believed in reminders. Walking away, he felt lighter, not healed completely, but healing. Love doesn't erase pain. It gives it purpose. Amara had whispered one truth, but that truth had become many voices now, gently reminding the world that compassion matters and time deserves respect. On the anniversary of that night, Ethan returned to the place where everything changed. He sat quietly, not to mourn, but to remember. The fear, the stillness, the whisper. He realized he no longer replayed the moment with pain. He replayed it with gratitude. "I heard you," he whispered into the quiet air. He thought about second chances, not as miracles that undo loss, but as choices that honor it. Loving better, listening more, being present. Life hadn't become easier, but had become clearer. As he stood to leave, he felt no heaviness, only responsibility. To live truthfully, to speak gently, to love bravely. Some secrets are meant to stay hidden. Others are meant to awaken hearts. Amara's had done exactly that. Ethan understood now that time doesn't stop for everyone. It stops for those who finally see. He watched people rush past him, chasing futures while forgetting the present. And he didn't feel frustrated anymore, only compassionate. Everyone carries something. Everyone is fighting silently. And everyone needs permission to be honest. Amara had given that permission. He promised himself he would never again assume silence meant strength, or distance meant indifference. Love needed expression. It needed courage. As he walked forward, he felt something steady inside him. Not closure, but clarity. Loss had shaped him, but love defined him. And that made all the difference. Years later, Ethan would still remember the exact sound of her voice, the softness, the truth, power. He would remember how one whisper had frozen a room, then reshaped a lifetime. Time had moved on, but meaning had remained. And in moments of doubt, fear, or hesitation, he would return to that lesson. Say the words. Carry the pain together. Love without waiting, because time is fragile. And love is brave. And sometimes, all it takes is one honest whisper to change everything. Some moments don't just pass, they transform us. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you to speak love before time moves on. Like the video, subscribe, and join our Heart Angels family, where compassion always finds a voice.